Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to our California, Nevada chat. And here on Wednesday, March 31st, thank you for joining us as we head into some beautiful weather here in both states. As we move into spring and summer, we certainly have many increasing opportunities in front of us. We have vaccines being administered, many counties moving from the purple tier to the red and from the red tier to the orange. And yet there still remains caution and vigilance as we do become more active. Currently here in California, we have only three counties remaining in the purple tier, 36 in red, 17 in orange, and 2 in yellow. So certainly a lot has happened over the past 30 days. In Nevada on March 15th, gathering capacities have increased and conventions and conferences and trade shows were at about 1,000 in capacity, but that has been supplanted by a 20% capacity or greater for venues that have 2,500 seats or plus. So the baseline still remains for other venues, 250 or 50% of capacities, and requests could be made for larger gatherings. So again, promising as we move into times when we feel it would be great to get back together for many of our meetings and certainly for many of our events. It also gives us a chance to start being concerned about water as we move certainly into spring and summer, given the fairly dry winter so far. So again, thanks to our chat team, Mr. Tom Addis, Nikki Gatz, Jeff Johnson, Caitlin Doyle, Bryce Seaver, and Tyler Miller, who make sure that we are on the air. And our section presidents, Dee Dee Moriarty and Robin Shelton. And President Moriarty will not be able to join us this morning. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer for the Southern California PGA, Tom Addis. Tom?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. And it's 5 days later. We were originally scheduled last Friday and moved to today for various reasons. And we have a really strong program for you today with the number and the talented speakers that we do have representing the USGA, the National Golf Foundation, Southern California Golf Association, and the like. So we're very happy and proud. We're also excited about the movement to different tiers. We had Orange and LA County this week, and it looks as though next week, and Craig will probably clarify, even more so, it looks like San Diego possibly, and then Riverside and San Bernardino counties next week, the way it's looking. So we're excited about that. We still have to, and I'm going to be the same old person, we still have to exercise our caution. Talking with Dr. John Landsberger, one of our frequent panelists, this past weekend, he's excited to see where we're going with these levels, but he's still warning us to make sure that we abide by the protocols to enable us to continue to advance the way we are. So let's all make sure that we're very aware of that so we can continue with our great programming we do. It's my pleasure now to introduce the Vice President of the Southern California PGA for a couple of words, Mr. Eric Lohmann. Eric?
Thanks, Tom and Len. Hopefully everybody can hear or see me, but I appreciate the opportunity just to say hello and good morning to all those on this meeting. On behalf of Robin Shelton and President Shelton and the rest of the Southern California PGA, just want to welcome all the other folks who are with us today. I didn't have much, I think you can see me now maybe. Didn't have anything really prepared, but just want to say thanks to Len and Tom and both your section staffs and those who participate on this very important chat. I know that we've been hosting these now for a while, and I certainly know there's a lot of folks who use these as guidance and how they operate their daily properties. So certainly thank you to all those who are responsible for putting these on. So thank you for that. Just real quickly, just want to remind everybody how important it is to be diligent. I know that Tom just brought it up, I believe, and Len did too, but we're not, although we are seeing some better numbers with COVID, and we're relaxing some of the restrictions and things like that. We're certainly not out of the woods quite yet. I know I'm halfway through a full vaccination, and thankfully we've seen a reduction in those getting infected here in our neighborhood in Orange County, and our staff has been healthy now for a month or so straight, and I know our resort partners are seeing the same effect as well. But we're certainly all it would take is a lapse in what we do or how we do it to infect several people before they get a chance to get the vaccination, and then right back to where we started. So I just would remind everybody to be as diligent as possible. I would remind everybody to try to be as engaging as possible. I think in these times, as we talked about retention of customers, and we've had such a great run this last 12 months, I know in my 30 plus years in golf, I've never seen something like it. I don't think we ever will, hopefully, or maybe, who knows. But this is a great time for us to remain engaged with our customers, our patrons. But I would challenge each and every one of you to be engaged and reconnect with your staff. I know that my staff here at Monarch Beach Golf Links has been very busy these last 12 months and under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, some because of COVID and family and just the pressure of being as busy as we have been. So I think it's important that we get to re-engage with our customers as much as it is with our staff. And not to forget your families as well. For those of you who've been working more or had to prioritize, work over family a little bit these last 12 months, I encourage you to take some time off and re-engage with your families. And last but not least, let's be thankful. Let's be thankful for the support we've gotten or we've been given from the Southern California PGA, the Northern California PGA, the USGA. I know that we have Mr. Kessler on the call from the Southern California Golf Association. There's a lot to be thankful for, and collectively, these last 12 months have proven to us the importance of brotherhood and fellowship. And I don't think we should ever be more thankful than we are today for the support and the teamwork that we've demonstrated between the sections and the associations. And so I'm very thankful for that. So that's what I have to add to this conversation today. I'll let the experts speak. Mr. Addis, the floor is yours, and thank you again for everything.
Thank you, Eric. And those of you who don't know, Eric is celebrating a little bit more today because of the UCLA Bruins last night, Final Four. So there you go.
And I want you to know that I just looked on ESPN, and I'm currently ranked 12,936,000 on the rankings of those doing the March Madness. But these guys are in it, so that's all that matters to me.
Very good. Thanks, Eric. Len, here you go.
Okay, thanks so much, Tom, and thanks, Eric, for being so subtle and having the helmet and the football right behind you there. As mentioned, we have some great speakers today. Craig Winter, Senior Director of Rules of Golf and Amateur Status, Jimmy Becker, Assistant Director of Championship and Golf Operations, and Mike Sweeney, Regional Affairs Director for the USGA. Thank you, Craig, Jimmy, and Mike for joining us. Ted Elephario. Ted is PGA member and Vice President of Player Development with the National Golf Foundation. And of course, Craig Kessler and Kevin Fitzgerald, Director and Assistant Director of Government Affairs for the Southern California Golf Association. So let's get started. We'll start with Craig Winter. Craig was hired by the USGA in May of 2013. Currently serves as Senior Director of Rules of Golf and Amateur Status. He sits on both the USGA and joint committees for the Rules of Golf and Rules of Amateur Status. And prior to joining the USGA, Craig served the Oregon Golf Association as the Director of Rules Education and Director of the Oregon Junior Golf. So Craig, Jimmy, and Mike, thank you for being with us. Certainly there's always been a lot going on with rules changes over the past couple of editions, and most notably recently the changes to amateur status. So Craig, I'll toss it to you to bring us all up to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Likewise, thank you to Tom, and good day to everyone on the call. Good morning as well to those of you out west. I am out east, but as you know, my roots come from the west, Oregon. As you heard, Eric, I wish the Ducks could have been there with you too. I do just want to say just a general thank you for the audience here today. As I think all of you are aware, these proposals were put out for feedback. We had 5 weeks of that. I'll note that it did formally end on Friday, the 26th, and I'll go through what those proposals are in the next 10 minutes or so. And I believe there's room for questions from all of you. Happy to clarify and call this kind of the unofficial extension of our feedback period. And I'll speak to primarily what we've heard from PGA members, because many of you have probably reached out to us and to the RNA to share views on specific areas, and we are deeply appreciative for that. And so that's the whole reason we have that feedback period on what we're proposing. To speak to what is going on with these proposals, this is really a mirror image of what we did with the rules of golf. Pretty significant revisions in 2019, where we looked at governance in many respects in a new light to try to be a whole lot more transparent about what we were thinking about and why we were thinking about the particular changes. Open it up to the world of golf and the organizations that are a part of it, and that certainly includes the PGA of America, your sections and your members, and just listen. And that worked very well for us in the rules of golf. We came out of the feedback period, which was quite a bit longer. It was about 6 months for the rules of golf, more substantial changes, and we made a number of changes moving into what turned out to be the 2019 rules. So we saw the value in the feedback period. It allowed us to hear from those that were going to be affected by it in a much more detailed way, so we could understand what was going on and how the rules would affect them. And we've moved into the rules of amateur status on the heels of the revisions to the rules of golf, primarily because, as you heard in my title, I am a shared resource, staff resource for both sets of rules, and similarly those others on my staff and with the RNA. And so when the time was upon us that we could put the rules of golf to bed, we decided to look at the rules of amateur status, knowing that there were some areas that we'd been troubled by for some time. And coming out of that review, we have a draft code, which is considerably shorter. It's just 2 pages, and I'll speak high level of what's in that set of rules. But I do want to note, just for this specific audience, that we have been fortunate to have been engaged with PGA leadership from the very beginning on this. Over a year and a half ago, you probably are already aware, but if not, Kerry Haig and John Easterbrook were great partners in this, to be able to listen and give feedback, and also from a national office perspective, and PGA Globals, that the entire global PGA community did weigh in early in the process with some concerns related to primarily instruction. Just to note how we've evolved to even get to these proposals, we initially were looking at purely a code that was about playing the game. We didn't have any work-related restrictions at all, and that raised some eyebrows with the PGA, and we listened, and some other organizations, and ultimately what we did propose back in late February did include restrictions and what is almost a carbon copy of the current rule moving forward into the 2022 revision date. We do plan to try to put these rules into effect in 22, whatever we end up deciding to finalize. And that just kind of speaks to the value that we have and the relationship we have with the PGA of America. And I would note as well that there were concerns that were raised about the prizes proposal, and specifically the ability for a tournament organizer to provide prizes to amateurs in any form. Notably, the kind of the flashpoint of feedback has been in relation to the option for cash prizes and what that might do to PGA members, the golf industry in general. And I'll get into that a little bit more here as I move into the next few minutes. But we didn't note the concern, or it wasn't noted. It was quite as high of a level of concern as instruction. It was in many ways kind of a side concern of, we're not quite sure this would be great, but really we need to make sure that instruction remains the area of the non-amateur, and primarily, obviously, all of you as PGA members recognize that the skill you bring to teaching players to play the game. And yet, once we opened up for public feedback, it was quite clear that cash prizes were far more of a concern to the individual PGA members than we had understood. And so I will note that we've received literally hundreds of emails from PGA members all across the country, and as I noted before, probably from some of you on this call, and we're reading those. We're hearing what you're saying, and I'm happy to answer specific questions that you have, but I think from the best message I can share from me to you is we have heard you, and we take those concerns certainly not lightly. We're continuing to be engaged with the PGA, your leaders at the national office, including Jim Richardson and Terry and John still. Seth is also involved in meetings with leadership. So we're hearing from members at the local level. We're hearing from sections, and we're also hearing from PGA leadership and continue to be engaged. What is in the proposals? I'll just take a couple minutes here to just talk about the difference between the work-related. I'm going to kind of put the rules themselves in two buckets as we're proposing a side of it where it speaks to working as a golf professional, just the kind of the traditional role.
Greg, we seem to have lost you on the audio. Yeah.
Sorry, am I back now?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
I apologize. Was that just a brief cutout, or was it a while?
It was actually as you were changing topics, that's pretty much when it started. Yeah.
Okay. So with respect to the work breaches, there's really three that I'll identify. That the golf professional, just the traditional role of a golf professional at a club or a driving range, would still continue to be a breach of the rules. An amateur could not accept employment as such. Membership to one of the worldwide PGAs would continue to be a breach of the rules, and instruction, as we know it today, would continue to be a breach of the rules. And all those three areas, with the one caveat that golf professional and employment is a little more focused. We currently in the rules of amateur status try to define professionalism through a whole bunch of different areas. And we're much more focused in what is considered to be a breach through professionalism. And that's really just that employment as a golf shop, employee as a golf professional or at a driving range. But generally speaking, the rest of those are the same. And I spoke to the feedback we received from different organizations, including PGA, the PGA of America. That's the main reason why those are continuing to be in the code, is because of the feedback we heard. That there was value in that, maintaining that distinction, and we listened and we carried that forward. So the work bucket is fairly well defined in how the rules are today. Not much change there. The prizes rule is the playing side of it. That's kind of the other bucket of the code, if you want to think about it that way. And that is really specific to this idea that the limit of a prize that one can accept is the only simple and easy to understand rule that would carry forward in these proposals to define who is an amateur and a non-amateur. So outside of the work setting, the only thing you need to know to know whether you're an amateur or not, or frankly anybody else to know if you're an amateur or not, is the answer to the question of, have you ever accepted a prize with a value greater than $750, whatever that form of prize might be. And again, as the flashpoint, cash would be an option for tournament organizers to provide. And I'll probably just speak to the comments that I have in the feedback we've received. This was not an attempt by us to propose a change in the way that tournament organizers pay out prizes. And yet what we've heard through the feedback is that there is a belief that once cash is an option, it will become far more omnipresent in the prizes that are given out to amateur golfers. What this proposal was actually about was looking at the game as it is today, the shop credit that many of you probably rely on to figure out your orders for the summer, the fall, the spring. To obviously, it's a livelihood and it's probably compensation tied in. And we believe that there's a lot of value in that. We're also aware of the realities of prizes, that some of them leave properties today. Some individuals will buy prizes at a box store or a discount online retailer, and they will award those at prizes at golf clubs. That does happen. There's also gift cards that can leave your property. There's even the concept of Visa gift cards. Some clubs are just shop credit. You have to spend it in the golf shop. Some clubs say you can spend it anywhere on property. And so there's a lot of flexibility today in the way that prizes can be awarded. And we weren't looking to change any of that through this proposal. There's also a lot of play at golf clubs around our country and frankly around the world, where there's small little envelopes given out of cash where the rules today would say that anybody who's played for cash prizes would be in breach of the rules. And that actually is a lot of golfers. That's tens of thousands of amateur golfers all around the world that on a regular basis are breaching the rules. And none of us, whether it be generally a PGA golf professional, when we call and say, hey, there's this issue that we've been made aware of, can we talk to you about it? We generally don't have a concern with any of that. And yet it's happening today, and it's a breach of the rules as we have them. So what this proposal was about was to say, let's just have a simple, easy to understand rule, put a limit on it, any form of prize, and it really reflects the way the game is played today, and it's modernizing the rule to fit that game. It was not an attempt. The intention was not to change to cash prizes, but I will just kind of close my comments to say that we have heard feedback, and that it does appear that there's a significant concern in the marketplace, primarily among the PGA membership, that this will likely lead to a liability on your livelihood. And we're working. This is what we do coming out of feedback. We're working to figure out how we can solve for those concerns and still put together a rule that will work for the game of golf, not just here in the States, but globally, not just young golfers, old golfers, all skill levels, elite players, club golfers. And we're taking all of that feedback in and recognizing that the rule that we've proposed probably isn't going to work for the game of golf as we know it. And primarily that's just saying thanks to all of you that have weighed in. Know that your organizations have been looking out for you. If that is a concern that you share, that cash prizes would be significant challenges, we have proposed them, and we have a lot of work to do now, closing the feedback period to figure out what rule we should go forward with. I think I'll probably leave my comments on that entire topic of the proposed amateur status rules there. Turn it over briefly to Jimmy Becker, obviously of the SCGA, to speak generally about how they're thinking about the proposed rules as they are, and whether it might change what they were planning to do. And then I think we can open it up to questions from all of you if you have any.
Thanks, Craig. Jimmy Becker with the SCGA, and thanks for the time today. And just to give everyone a little perspective on the Allied Golf Association amateur world of how we deal with amateur status, our compatriots at the Northern Cal Golf Association, Northern Nevada and Southern Nevada Golf Associations as well. We handle, in concert with the USGA, all the amateur status reinstatements, that application process. So we partner on that. And we do get a lot of emails and inquiries on just general amateur status questions. Recently, we had a chat amongst the International Association of Golf Administrators, which is mainly made up of all the allied golf associations. And this topic was discussed in terms of how these changes would impact all the amateur associations in terms of prizes. And it was surprising that, most don't plan on changing what they're doing. Cash is not going to really, all of the associations don't give out anything but script currently, or gift cards if they give out anything at all, and the cash component wouldn't change that. It is probably the number one question we get is about cash via email or phone, but we recognize the need as well for modernization in terms of this. And Craig forgot to mention this. I think a lot of this ties into the brand, image, and likeness that they're dealing with on the NCAA level as well. And some of the states that have passed that legislation. So tying that all together, and we have not gotten a lot of comment from members on this, but we are obviously going to go with whatever has come out, and we're supportive of what is proposed by the USGA and RNA. But we also recognize all the challenges on the PGA section level as well, and our partnership with them is using them as facilities and for championships and qualifiers, and we support and we recognize and completely understand their position too. So we're just here to help enforce the rules as they are written, or whatever gets written for 2022, and however we can help out our PGA members and facilities as well. And I'll kind of turn it over to Mike Sweeney a little bit if he has anything to add from that perspective.
Nothing to add on amateur status. I'll pass it back to any questions from the group.
Okay, Craig, Jimmy, and Mike, don't see any questions at the moment. So, let me just change gears for a little bit and talk about the U.S. Open. As we and the Women's Open, of course, as we move through the tiers and the colors, and things seem to be promising. Has that changed? Do you have a plan A and a plan B for attendance and so on and so forth? As we get to the Opens at Torrey Pines and Olympic, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Len. I'll comment on that. It's going to be an exciting June in California with the Women's Open at Olympic Club in early June, followed by 2 weeks later, the U.S. Open back at Torrey Pines. So, hearing what you guys said earlier, knowing, seeing what we're seeing in the news with the counties going in the good direction with our tiered system, we're very optimistic about, continue to go in that direction. So we haven't made any final decisions regarding spectators at either the Women's Open or the US Open yet. So it's really important to us that we do have spectators at those championships, but the health and safety of everybody that's going to be attending and playing is going to be, our first priority. So no decisions have been made, but we are continuing to work closely with the city and county of San Francisco and San Diego on a number of different scenarios. But most likely, if we do have a chance to have fans on site, it's going to be a considerably smaller footprint with social distancing and mask wearing. But we are hopeful that with the counties going in the right direction, we can work with the officials in San Francisco and San Diego to finalize something in the next, hopefully in the next month on what our fan footprint will be. So I was hoping to have some more news for everybody at this call, but unfortunately, it's still a wait and see situation. The one thing we did recently announce to the volunteers that are going to be volunteering at the U.S. Open and Women's Open is that we are going to have a smaller footprint of volunteers on site. So we just did recently make that announcement to volunteers at both of those championships. So, my role at the USGA is to oversee our relationships with our allied golf associations and our volunteers in 10 Western states. And that really does include our relationships with the PGA section staff in California, in Northern Nevada, and throughout the Western states. So I really look forward to, hopefully throughout the year, getting to see you all in person again at events and meetings. And one thing I really wanted to mention as well was, for those of you that are trying to qualify for the Opens this year, best of luck for those that are trying to qualify. It'd be awesome to see section members back at the U.S. Open and in Torrey Pines or at Olympic Club. But then for those of you that are hosting, your club is hosting a qualifier, I really wanted to send a special thank you to the PGA section members and their staff that are part of the clubs that are hosting, because we have 14 national championships and around 40,000 participants that enter a year for our national championships, and about 6% of those 40,000 entrants actually make it to a USGA national championship. So for 94% of those entrants, their national championship experience is at that qualifier at your club. So the customer service that you and your members provide at the practice rounds and during the qualifying round has a huge impact on those that are playing in a USGA qualifier. So just wanted to send a special thanks to everybody that's hosting a qualifier this year, and good luck to those that are going to be playing.
Mike, thank you. We appreciate that. Yes, it certainly will be exciting to have both championships here in California this June, as you say. And I know that these issues are very complex and changing all the time. So we really appreciate certainly the relationship. Craig, you mentioned it, and Jimmy mentioned it, between the PGA of America and the USGA, of course, and our allied associations, Northern California and Southern California Golf Associations, and all the work to get us open last year. It's hard to believe it's only been a year that we've been through so much, but we're grateful that the conversation has moved from, are we having the event, to yes, we are having the event, what it's going to look like. So thank you all for the work. And should we receive any questions or points, we will be certainly ready and forward them to you. As Craig mentioned, kind of an informal extension of the feedback period. So thank you all. We hope you can stay with us for the remainder of our session.
Tom,
Okay.
Len, everybody on the call, thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Craig. Next up, Mr. Ted Elephario, and Ted is a PGA member and the National Golf Foundation's Vice President of Player Development. He has emerged and is recognized as a leading expert in the areas of player and business development in golf, and travels the globe conducting informative, engaging, and impactful workshops on how to grow business and revenue. In addition, he leads the NGF's Welcome to Golf initiative, which focuses on growing adult golf participation by creating and training leaders in the golf industry. Prior to the NGF, Ted's career highlights include working for the PGA of America as Director of Golf Program Development, owned 2 successful golf academies in Orlando, opened and managed 41 Nike Golf Learning Centers throughout the United States, and worked in Los Angeles as a freelance producer in the film industry. And Ted, again, just to say thank you for coming out a couple of years ago when you're still with the PGA of America to do a couple of events for us in Sacramento and a half of Bay out on the coast. Thank you for joining us today. And Ted, it's all yours.
Wow, great. Hey, thanks so much for having me, Len and Tom. And just kudos to the section staffs really everywhere for all the things they're doing to keep golf alive and going and thriving. Thank you to all the attendees and the members that are on here taking time out of their schedule to visit with me. And yeah, I just really appreciate it. And as Len kind of mentioned too, I mean, SoCal and NorthCal just really dear to my heart. Love being out there, love being with all of you. And hoping some of my friends are on here and we'll chat later. So Len or somebody, can you give me a shout out just to make sure you can see my screen? And
Yep, so far so good, Ted. Yep.
Fantastic. This is the only slide I have, so we're good. No. Hey, most of you do know me. I've been out to some of the sections. I did work for the PGA of America for over 6 years, conducting workshops and going around the country and talking about business and player development. So important to everything that we're trying to do today and even beyond for this game. I do want to apologize in advance. Some of you might have seen and endured my ADM videos. You know, it's a long 3 hours to get 3 MSR points, but hopefully you got something out of it. It was mildly entertaining as well. So yeah, just apologize in advance for that. But also, yes, I have now shifted gears and I'm working for the National Golf Foundation, and been with them since September of 2019. So coming on my 2nd year this year, and really excited about the opportunities that I have there. In addition to similar to the role that I had at the PGA, my role has been expanded much more. And what it's also given me is an understanding of how data and research is used or not used or misused in the golf industry and in media for the most part in general. For example, if you just give me a couple of moments here, you see some of the articles that have come out, and these are like 2019 articles when it says golf was back in the Olympics, too bad no one plays it. And then, you know, Death Watch, how much longer can golf survive? Now, one of my favorites here, America's golf courses are burning. More than 800 golf courses have closed over a decade. Now clubhouses are going up in flames. I had no idea, but clubhouses are apparently going up in flames. And then there's always the amid golf's decline. Towns must decide what to do with the land. And the reason I start off with these slides is that I'm in the loop with getting media requests at the NGF. And it blows me away how the requests are always slanted to the negative. It's like, hey, NGF, can you provide us some closure numbers because we want to do an article on how bad golf is doing? Or, hey, NGF, can you provide us with some decline in round numbers because we want to know how many fewer golfers are playing? And there's some truth to that, right? I mean, when we look at 2019, we had 24.3 million golfers in the US, and we had 9 18-hole equivalents that opened that year. And when I mean 18-hole equivalents, the way we measure it is we add up the number of holes in the United States and divide them by 18, and that's an 18-hole equivalent. So if you're a 9-hole golf course, it takes 2 9-hole golf courses to be an 18-hole equivalent. But in the same year, as we know or may not know, we had 246 18-hole equivalents that closed that year. That was the highest on record since forever in the United States. And the reason I brought up the definition of 18-hole equivalents, because if there are 9-holers, which we know there are 9 holes in here, that number actually jumps up closer to the 300 mark as far as actual golf courses closing that year. So what does 2020 look like? Well, good news is that we've had an increase in the amount of golfers in the US by about 500,000, which is great. As far as the 18-hole equivalent opens, we've had a few more, 10.5. The interesting thing is we had a pretty good number of golf courses that were in restoration phase that came on board in 2020. And then as far as closures, yeah, still up there, but it's actually declined. There's less than there was the previous year and a couple of years in the past, and that's good news. And we're hoping that maybe good or bad, 2020 has added some type of like, phasing system out that we kind of cleaned up a little bit, and golf course decline as far as closures will be much less moving forward. To give you a little bit of context on how this looks, in the prior 15 years versus the next 13 years through 2018, you know what, skip that, let's go to 2014. We already said there was 246 closures in 2019. And if we go 15 years back to today with 193 closing in 2020, you can see that we've been consistently closing golf courses for the last 15 years. But NGF, we call it a corrective phase, right? There was a little bit of an oversupply and the demand wasn't as much there. And as a result of that, only stood that there would probably come to a point where this is happening. But over the last 15 years, we've had a negative 11% growth rate in golf courses opening versus the prior 15 years to 2006. We had a 44% increase in golf courses opening. Well, that's pretty much all I got. Are there any questions? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, but it's not as dismal as the media will portray it, or even as the numbers show. I mean, just looking at this slide here excites me to some extent because there are more golf courses, and this is an 18-hole equivalent. This is actual golf course numbers now in the U.S. than there are Starbucks or McDonald's. And by the way, I'm a huge Starbucks fan. And when I'm standing at the top floor of my mall next to a Starbucks and I look downstairs and I can see another Starbucks on the lower floor, it just astounds me that we have more golf courses than 2 Starbucks in the same mall, like less than 100 yards away. And you can see movie theaters, and they've gotten hit hard, obviously, this year and still are. And then Walmarts, who figured that there were more golf courses by a lot than there were Walmarts in the United States. Moving forward, too, there's this great opportunity here. If you look at those gray bars, that's the amount of golfers that play on golf courses. So we said in about 2020, we had 24.8 million. But if we added the amount of off-course properties like the Top Golfs or the indoor swing simulators or the standalone driving ranges where people are going out and involving some kind of golfing activity, you can see that in 2020, if we add that number to the on-course participation, the number of golfers is 36.9 million in the United States. So if you take that into consideration, golf is actually on a growth path and it's doing pretty well. What excites me especially as a teacher is this number right here. That number represents the amount of golfers that have gone to like a Top Golf or standalone driving ranges or indoor facilities that have never been on a golf course before. To me, 12.1 million people is like opportunity. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. So how do we capture that? Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But golf, as far as popularity amongst recreational sports, is at the top. It's 1 out of 13 people play golf, and you can see how it relates to the other sports and recreation activities. As a matter of fact, if you include the Top Golf, those that have never been at a golf course who just like to go to a range or practice and just have some fun at a Top Golf type facility, that number is actually 1 out of 9 people in the United States are involved in that kind of thing. If I was going to take a second here and pause and ask all of you, what is the fastest recreational type of program going on right now or sport? What would you think it is? Ready for the answer? Pickleball, right? How many of you guessed it? And even as pickleball is jumping up in numbers, it's someplace around 3 to 3.5 million people in the United States are now playing pickleball. It's still only 1 out of 100 that play it. Before I go to the next slide, is anybody else disturbed by the fact that this gentleman's like rear leg is in like a very peculiar position? There's no way that he's not injured or going to feel pain the next day. But I digress. Let me get back to business. A couple more stats for you. 2020 finished with almost 502 million rounds, the most since 2006 and the biggest year-over-year increase since 1997, which is the year that Tiger won his first major. In addition to that, the number of junior golfers ages 6 to 17 jumped by 630,000, a year-over-year increase of 24%. That was the largest since, 1997 when Tiger won his first major. Also, the number of beginners, those who played on a golf course for the very first time, had the largest jump on record with 570,000 more newcomers than the year before. In total, there were a record 3 million beginners in 2020. To give you an idea what that means, for about the last decade, every year, we've had about 2.5 million new golfers or beginners try the game of golf for the first time. So to see that kind of a jump shows that, hey, there is some interest there. And the number of female golfers rose by almost 500,000. That's 450,000, eclipsing 6 million in total for the first time since 2007. So when you look at these numbers and then you think back to like what some of the stories are, there's definitely a difference in way that golf is perceived. Going a little bit more to your local level, California ranks second behind only Florida. Did I tell you I'm living in Florida now, by the way? No, only in Florida, with 970 golf courses at 826 facilities, which really is amazing because consider this, only 5 countries in the world have more golf courses than the state of California. That's the UK, Japan, Canada, Australia, and Germany. So that's pretty cool. And also, California has far more golfers than any other US state, almost 2.8 million in total. And consider this, that's over 11% of the 24.8 million on-course golfers in the US that California represents. Now forgive me because I didn't put anything in here for Nevada, and that's a total whiff on my part. But when I did some research, I found out it's because Nevada has no golfers, no rounds of golf, and there's no golf courses there. So that's the only reason I neglected it. Just kidding, of course. Moving forward, I'm just going to let you digest this slide a little bit, is that prior to June, California in general was down in the amount of rounds of golf by 13%. And it wasn't until the second part of the year that we started seeing the increase. And it makes sense, right? Because restrictions are starting to come off a little bit, more people could gather, and golf courses were finding some popularity because they were like a good place to go as an option. But it wasn't until October where it started going into the positive swing. And the exciting part about that is that the year ended in California with a 5.6% increase over the prior year's numbers when it comes to rounds played. So great job out there, great job. So I was given a section presentation for the North Florida PGA section a couple of months ago, and I'm showing them similar stats and making it more Florida friendly and what have you. And during the presentation, somebody stops and say like, hey, can you tell us all this? Like, when are we going to return back to normal? And it got me thinking, and I didn't say this, but I was thinking inside, like, really, like normal, like more golf courses closing in 2019 than any other time in the history of the United States, like that kind of normal, or a decrease in rounds, that kind of normal, or a flat curve of the amount of golfers playing, like that kind of normal? Is that really what we want to go back to? So I don't think anybody really thinks like, yeah, that's what we want. We want more closures. But it got me thinking, so what is normal? And I started realizing that normal is kind of still happening in a weird way for us at the golf course facility level, right? Because I've just spoken about all these new golfers and women and juniors playing more and coming more to the facilities and that. But what have we done other than taking precaution for safety, for health reasons, that has changed that has changed that perception of what normal is? Let me show you what I mean. Back in like the late 1900s and the early 2000-ish era, there was what we call this bubble that happened. There was a time in the US in the early 2000s that we got up to 30.6 million golfers in the United States. And if I was to ask you, why do you think that was? I think everybody would probably say, well, it was because Tiger Woods came on the scene, and that would exactly be the correct answer. So we had this big amount of like golfers because like, hey, this guy Tiger, he's like cool and he's sexy and he's like wearing Nike stuff and he's red shirts and he's got like people shouting like, you're the man, and like, wow, third world countries even knew who Tiger Woods is. And it brought this excitement that people were like, hey, golf is pretty cool. I'm going to go out there and give it a shot. And that's exactly what happened, is that newbies, non-golfers going out to the golf course for the first time and playing. Well, I don't have to tell you that if somebody who's never played before just jumps on the first tee on a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock to give golf a shot, it's probably not a good experience, not only for him or her, but probably for the people that he or her was playing with, right? So, so the interesting thing of this bubble, more golfers, if you look at the red line down below, that's the average amount of golf that golfers were playing those same years. And the weird part is that it's our lowest point that we've had as far as number of rounds played. And when we did some investigation, why is that? Well, it makes sense that those newbies that came to the golf course who have never played before had a less than stellar and welcoming experience. And as a result, after playing 1 or 2 times, said, this game is a lot harder than I ever thought. I'm out of here. I'm going to find something else. So I bring that up because we're just going through this pandemic and just hopefully seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And are we facing the same thing? We've got all those rounds are going up. We got more people showing up at our golf courses last year because things were closed. There wasn't a whole lot of things for people to do. And did we miss that opportunity, or did we benefit from that opportunity as far as the amount of golfers that are going to continue on? Well, to look at that, first thing I do is like, there is a significant amount of opportunity here. We did our surveys and we found out that we asked non-golfers, would they be willing to try the game of golf out for the first time? And the questions and the answers are basically no, I'm interested, I'm somewhat interested, and I'm very interested in trying golf for the first time. Well, if we only took those who said they're somewhat interested or very interested, the number is that there's 50.6 million people in the US in 2019 that said like, hey, yeah, we'd like to give golf an opportunity and give it a shot. Now, moving forward in 2019 to 2020, like that number has risen even more. We're at 58.9 million people who've expressed some interest. To give you the significance of that, back in 2018, the number was around 47 million. So we've added a pretty good chunk of new opportunities there for us. And how long will this opportunity last? Well, this past February, we found the first time that there was a little bit of a dip in the rounds played by month. But I don't want everybody to get concerned like, uh-oh, here we go, because there was a lot of factors involved with that, right? First of all, we had this huge cold snap that went through the country. I mean, Texas was shut down for several weeks, and who knows how many other states where typically there'd be golf happening weren't having people playing golf. And then there was the opportunity of places like Florida and Arizona, for the most part, where snowbirds from the northern states like to come down and visit our golf courses and play our golf courses and show that increase of participation, who didn't this year, who stayed up north, who either stranded or just because of whatever reasons in health that they decided not to move on it. So I'm not too concerned about us like, uh-oh, here it goes again. But we want to take advantage of the opportunity while it's still fresh to make sure that we can capture as many of these new golfers and existing golfers who are playing more as much as possible moving forward, right? So, okay, so now what? Well, for one, we are kind of a little bit business as usual. And this is what I mean. If you go onto Google and type in outdoor activities in Los Angeles, I'm just going to scroll through literally about 3 or 4 screens of what I saw when I did that. And the reason I'm showing you these images is there's no golf courses or anything that pertains to golf in any of these images. And that's a challenge, right? That's showing us that like we're not doing a really good job in getting this word out. And it's not just there. I thought, well, I should do the same thing for around the San Francisco Bay Area. And if you look at these images on Google, and you can do them yourself, no golf courses shown anywhere as an outdoor activity. Matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I did one for Houston, Southern Texas PGA, and I did this for them. And one of the activities that came up was you go to this bridge and you sit on the bridge and you watch bats fly by. I'm not talking like Batman background, like bats fly by. And yet that was on there, and golf course and golfing was no place to be found, right? And then I thought like, well, I should like put in golf courses, right? And when I did that, the very first page is the images that you see here are what came up. And 2 things I noticed right away is that, one, when you look at other activities, there are like people engaging in them. There are people bike riding or kayaking or whatever it is. And then you look at ours, and we have a tendency to just feature our signature holes, and oftentimes with nobody on there. The other thing I realized, and here it is for San Francisco golf courses, which looks the same, is exactly that. They all kind of look the same. So if I'm vying for a piece of this increase in golf activity, why would somebody choose my golf course over somebody else's if they go on Google and type in golf courses in my area and they see this? As a result of that, I'd like to give you guys all an activity to do, not now, but afterwards. Above the fold is basically a newspaper term back in the days when they actually had newspapers. And when people would throw the newspapers on the ground for people to pick up and do whatever, purchase or distribute, the newspaper was folded in half. And the top part, the part that was exposed to people as they walked by or in the stands, was the most interesting, compelling story that newspaper had. For example, back in the days when people walked on the moon, that's the fold. That's a pretty interesting story. The reason I'm bringing this up is I'd love for all of you to go to your websites at some point, because in the digital world, above the fold is, what does somebody see when they land on your website, and without clicking on anything or scrolling up, what is it they see? What is the first image? What is the verbiage that they see? Is it compelling, like, wow, I need to check this place out? Or is it a picture of a green with a flag stick on it, which is just like any other golf course that they'd probably visit as well? The same holds true for those that have banquet facilities. Are we seeing just a place setting? And do we think that people are going to say, like, I need to book my wedding there because that place setting is just gorgeous? Or is it people like in a wedding party where the bride and groom are engaged and like kissing or whatever, and people are happy and cheering and like, oh, that's the experience that I want for my wedding as well? So I challenge you to do this. But also going back to those images and the Google searches, we're not out there. So that means we're the ones who have to make things happen. And I challenge all of you to look at like a three-legged stool tier approach. One is we want to invite people, which means that we have to get off of our golf facilities and find people and bring them in. Go to businesses that have a large amount of employees and say, like, golf is so good for your employees' benefits, for their health reasons, for their stress levels, for the opportunity to socialize with people afterwards, to just have fun in the great outdoors if they've been stuck in offices all day, or going to schools. And yes, obviously for the kids and the juniors and the children there, but what about those teachers and the admin staff? I mean, how do we get them out there as well? And what other opportunities are there that we can go out and find people? And we need to make it personal and bring them into our facilities versus just putting a business card and a flyer in our golf shop and we hope that people will find us. The other part is, once we get them there, how do we introduce them to golf in a welcoming way? Something that's like fun and entertaining. When those newbies are coming to our golf course, are they just thrown out there and and take a lesson or two and you're on your way? Or is there something else that we can do that would make it very prominent for them to come back? Meaning, like, maybe we ask them and we give them a tour of the facility and we show them how the range ball machine works and what have you. And then there's the retention part. And this is a big one for all of us, is that we had the exposure this past year and people did come to our golf courses. And then how do we retain them? What are we doing to capture their email addresses or their contact information and ask them to come back? But if we're asking them to come back to what? Do we have programs and giving them reasons to why they should return to our golf courses? Or are we just like hoping they have some kind of a good experience left on their own and that maybe they'll come back again? So I challenge all of you to think about this and maybe get together with your staffs and your significant others that are at the property who are decision makers and come up with some ideas and brainstorm on what you can do with this three-legged type stool model. So as I wrap up here, and thank you all again for your time, you may have seen me do this before in some of my presentations, but when I get my iPhone and always have that software update, and it usually asks me the three options: do you want to install now, or do you want to do it later, or do you want details? Like, I think we'd all agree nobody clicks on details, right? I mean, who's going to read that stuff? Not that I even understand it. And I also think install now is usually like not the first choice that people make when it comes to this. I think if you were honest with me, you would all probably say later. There's a update waiting on my phone now. It's been on there for about 3 days, and it's been later for me. And why is that? Well, one, because we like the way the phone works now, right? And two, like, if it starts changing things around, it's like I have to relearn stuff, and And then the other reason is too, like, wow, it needs like 1.8 gigabytes to do this update, and I'm down to like 246 megabytes. I have to like delete stuff and go through all that and see which photos I want to keep and videos, and that just seems like too much work. So I'm going to hold off. Might those be the same reasons that sometimes we don't try new things at the golf industry? One of the things that I'm hearing now is that people don't think there is a need to really work on inviting people, introducing them to people at the golf courses, and to retain them, because they are just slammed. Their tee sheets are full. They're like, come on, Ted, look, business is busy. I don't have time to do marketing or go out there. But my concern is that if we wait for later to do this because we don't have the time, or we're too busy, or we just can't clear out things, or we just like the way things are working right now, that we're going to miss an opportunity moving forward that probably will never afford itself again, at least in my lifetime. I don't know when there'll ever be another 2020 year as far as the way it's been for the golf industry, right? So think about that. And what I would say to all of you is don't wait if we start seeing numbers declining or business starts going up, or that's the first time a tee time has been open on my tee sheet for a while. Start now and already plan on how you're going to keep those tee sheets filled moving forward, and how you can capture those newbies into golf instruction that will turn them into golfers, not necessarily students. And with that, I just want to say thank you to all of you. My contact information is here. If you have any questions or comments, if we have time, I'm happy to do so now. If not, I'm happy to take any later, and you can definitely contact me. Len, Tom, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to all of you.
Thank you, Ted. As always, a tremendous amount of information delivered in a wonderful way. You know, I'm just probably a little biased. Well, certainly a lot biased. You know, why my golf course? To answer that question, I think it goes to the folks that are on this call right now, and it's the relationships developed between the club professionals, and it's the relationships. We're so fortunate to be here in California, where both the professional bodies and the amateur bodies are so close, and a day like today, I think, is a great example of that, as we have Craig Winter and Mike Sweeney joining us from the USGA. That, you know, we participate together, we program together, and then I'll also talk about the investment that many are making in their businesses, such as taking that top golf experience to their practice facilities and such. So, Ted, do you see that?
Yeah.
You know, in terms of the monitors, in terms of the machinery, in terms of the technology that's being used at Operation 36, and on and on and on, to keep people coming. Do you see that investment around the country?
Yeah, great. First of all, great comments, Len, and I agree with you. And you should be biased, because I do have an opportunity to speak in many, many sections, and you guys are like really doing cutting edge stuff and trying to stay ahead of all this. So kudos to everybody. Secondly, as far as this, absolutely. My concern is, like, with the technologies that are there. I mean, Ops 36 is a great one because it's at our facilities and we get it, but how are we getting those 12.1 million people that are at standalone ranges or at the Top Golfs or the indoor facilities out to our golf courses? And I think it starts with as simple as creating some communication between your golf course and those facilities nearby, starting a relationship with your golf course and those facilities nearby, and asking them what you can do to help them with their business, but in return, what they can do to help you with your business. I mean, we're all in this together, and we're all looking for ways to continue to grow the lovely game of golf that we all like have made our careers and are passionate about. So yes, technology is going to be it, but I am just going to like say this as a footnote, and this is Ted Elephario speaking, not NGF or anything. We also have to be careful that we don't lose the human element to technology, right? Technology should support what it is that we're doing as humans versus take the place of. Like TrackMan, as awesome as it is, and people love seeing the numbers, it's probably never going to take the place of instruction from a one-on-one with another human being, so to speak. And data and research goes to some extent, right? It's knowledge, but how do we take that knowledge and convert it to make it real and actionable and make a difference in everything that we're trying to do?
Thanks, Ted. Again, thanks for your time this morning. You know, we will stay close, as we always do, again, because it's getting more and more exciting. So we appreciate you being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. You guys are the best. Have yourselves the best day. And I'm going to pop off, but enjoy the rest of the time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
And we'll move to Craig Kessler's. Just about everyone in the state of California knows Craig at this point, and Craig has been with us for each of our chats. And Craig, some important issues going on as well. Interestingly enough, as we talk about land and we talk about golf courses opening and golf courses closing, and we talk, as we have over the past couple of weeks, about Assembly Bill 672, which is now in front of us. And Greg, some updates, please, on the counties moving and probably Assembly Bill 672.
Exactly what I had planned to talk about today, Len. So March coming in as a lion and going out as a lamb is a weather term, which is a strange one to use when you're talking to a California audience, particularly when you're sitting off of Santa Monica Bay on a day that's supposed to reach 80 degrees. But I think it's apropos to the numbers you mentioned in your presentation at the introductions, Len, that at the very beginning of this month, I think there were only 2 counties that were not in the purple tier, and they were small counties up in Northern California. And as we're getting ready to say goodbye to March today, virtually well over half of the state is in the red or increasingly in the orange tier. I believe today is the day that Orange County moved into the orange tier. Los Angeles County has qualified for it and will hold off until Monday to get all the details down, because such has been the nature of Los Angeles County's experience from the very beginning. And we anticipate that, I think as Tom said, San Bernardino, Riverside, and San Diego County moving to the orange tiers probably much sooner than later, within a week or two. And just as an aside, I'm aware, because the conversation came up in relation to the US Open this summer, that when San Diego County does get to the orange tier, spectators are permitted, not a full load. Now, of course, that'll be something that the USGA has command and control over. But nonetheless, at least when San Diego moves to the orange tier, and by June, they could be in the yellow tier, or maybe out of the tiering structure completely. So the odds are very heavy. There'll be some kind of spectating, at least on a limited basis. And I think those of us who have watched much of the tour, that adds a little bit of an excitement to it that just perhaps wasn't there, sadly, for the PGA Championship last year. Although we were so grateful that was able to go forward at all, I don't think anyone paid attention to just how quiet it was. So as we, in California anyway, advance from tier to tier to tier, and as the caseloads increasingly look better and better and better, and particularly better in those counties that were probably the worst performers just a few months ago, there's a lot of cause for optimism. There's a lot of cause for seeing the game come back to 100% of what it was. And I'm not referring to some of those bad things that Ted just talked about, but some of the good things like regular holes and flag sticks and rakes and bunkers. To our knowledge, in every county in Southern California anyway, except Los Angeles, which still has a golf appendix, we were able to get that appendix modified substantially a few weeks ago. But we did try to convince them that maybe they should go the way of the other counties and eliminate it altogether in favor of simply following the state rules, which then, of course, would have allowed the county to, when it moved to the orange tier next week, to very seamlessly adopt those common touch points, which the science has told us pose no danger whatsoever, even at the height of the pandemic. But they elected not to do that, so I imagine we'll be in that same old tug of war of trying to get their attention to update the golf appendix on something as trivial from their perspective as rakes and flag sticks. Important to us perhaps, but trivial to them. So we'll see how that goes. All of that's good news. We're starting to put, even though there's some very disturbing statistics from the East Coast, very disturbing news out of Chicago today, where they're seeing some spikes, and they've put a halt to much of their openings. People travel. They travel to California. Like I said, it's nearing 80 on Santa Monica Bay today. So, and not everyone is yet vaccinated. And with each passing day, more and more persons are being vaccinated. And it does turn out that there's something we're discovering in the highly populous counties of California, is that a lot more persons than we thought just 6-7 months ago have been exposed and have some antibody immunity to COVID. Far more so than we thought, which may explain one of the reasons that we had so many spikes, is because a lot of asymptomatic persons were spreading this without any knowledge of that. And again, that was the most insidious thing about COVID, was that it was most transmissible in its asymptomatic phase, which is a little bit different than most viruses. And those of you who've listened to these broadcasts and to Dr. Landsberger have heard that point over and over and over and over again. So let's move on. Life moves on, and life's going to move on after COVID. And I think everyone understands that golf's greatest challenge is to take advantage. I'm glad to hear Ted talk about 2020 or the pandemic as probably a once in a generation opportunity to take what was a totally unexpected and unmerited bounty. I know it's in bad taste to refer to something which is, at the end, when all is finished, more than 600,000 Americans will have perished as a result of this. Nonetheless, one of the incredibly unexpected and unintended consequences is the discovery that golf was almost created for a viral pandemic. So we've attracted a lot of persons to the game. We've attracted a lot of persons who played the game who are playing more in part because it was the only thing to do, but maybe in larger part because they were able to work remotely, which gives you an opportunity, and I'm sure many on this call have availed themselves of that, to slip out and play a quick nine, and then be back at your home without much commute time, and be able to get back to work and things. So there, ironically, that's a feature of modernity, or when we get back to normal, we'll never get back to full normal in that regard. And that might be something that benefits golf. But I think, as Ted said, we have to take advantage of it. It isn't just going to happen on its own, nor should we be fooled by those jammed up tee sheets that they'll remain jammed up if we don't take proactive steps. Now, one of the proactive steps that you'll be hearing, not just from the SCGA or the California Alliance for Golf, and the two sections in very short order. You've heard about it a little bit. The last time I addressed this audience, I mentioned an Assembly Bill 672, and Len just mentioned it in the introduction, that at that time was nothing more than a spot bill by Assembly Member Cristina Garcia, who comes from sort of the southeast area of Los Angeles County, to adopt in this legislative session those changes in California law that would be necessary to very, very seamlessly and easily convert golf courses into what she referred to as affordable housing and or open space. Open space is a red herring. It's a sop. It's irrelevant. There's nothing in California law which prevents the conversion of any golf course, public, private, daily fee of any variety, from being converted into another recreational purpose or simply open space. There are a lot of things which prevent a lot of categories of golf course, either prevent or substantially delay the conversion of those golf courses into something that would require zoning changes and would require environmental impact reports, which gives communities that have other ideas about the value of the golf course in their community, tools from which to sort of extend the decision-making period, and then perhaps get out there that perhaps the community doesn't want it. So 672 was a spot bill. We thought it was aimed, and we think it was initially, at those changes in the Surplus Land Act and the Public Park Preservation Act that would go to the very heart of the municipal sector, which is 22% of the golf stock in California and about 90% of where we practice all our Grow the Game programs. That the ones at least that we advertise so much and are most proud of, and those that are at the grassroots. But perhaps for reasons we don't quite understand, but we suspect maybe that might have engendered the opposition of what those of us who dabble in this area understand is the greatest lobbying force in Sacramento is not the trial lawyers or the teachers or the oil and gas industry. It's local government. So no entity in California has a greater lobbying force in Sacramento than local governments. And I suspect that local governments were very concerned about that sort of direct attack on municipal golf. So the bill now has some meat on the bones. It's not merely a spot bill, but has been amended to actually have some very specifics. And it can be amended many more times based upon who steps forward to oppose it, who steps forward to support it, or just simply for whatever reasons. And what it is now is a zoning and CEQA exemption bill. Now, CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act, and it's about 50 years old right now in this state. And it's that document that requires that as each project proposal, any land use proposal comes forward, Many of them, a decision has to be made whether or not it invokes the need for a full environmental impact report as part of the decision-making process. Now, many things don't require that, or there are uses that are consistent with the current zoning or the current use. But there are those things, and certainly whether the golf course is a private club, a daily fee facility, or a municipal facility, changing a 150 basic open space acres, a golf course, into, for example, residential development or commercial development would under current law invoke an environmental impact report, because you're talking, and among those things that California law requires to be considered as among the environmental impacts, one of them is certainly, well, we understand loss of open space. Well, you lose a golf course and it's replaced by development, that's clearly an impact, and it has to be discerned, evaluated as part of the decision-making process. Over and above that, loss of recreational opportunities. Well, you lose a golf course, no matter what its status, that's a clear loss. There are traffic and other factors and noise factors. I've never seen those actually affect a decision in the public sphere yet, but the other two very much so. So what this bill proposes to do is give the same exemption that so far has been given only to major football stadiums, multi-billion-dollar construction projects. So to rezone and repurpose a golf course, and again, it could be a private club as well, would get an exemption from having to do the environmental impact report. What that means in real terms, and I'm not going to name the city, but I'll give you sort of, and some of you will guess what I'm talking about. But in the last couple of years, a daily fee facility in a mid-sized city of about 50 or 60,000, a very middle-class city, has some nice neighborhoods and some less nice neighborhoods, and a private party built a daily fee golf course in a location. I don't know what the entitlements were at the time or some of the discussion. And it did well for a while. And as you saw from all those statistics, it's done less well in recent years, except maybe perhaps in the last year. And so the owner wants to develop it, which would create a powerful incentive for this small city that, at least before Congress gave a great deal of money to cities and counties across the country, where we're in the same position as many others. They're really hurt by COVID and in deep deficit. Just merely changing from a golf course, a daily fee golf course, which pays next to nothing in property taxes, another subject we've talked about many times in the past, suddenly building it all in housing, and this was a residential development, would yield immediately over 5 million would be the take just from the property taxes for that city, creating a powerful incentive for the zoning authority and the entitlement authority, because they're an interested party in participating financially to doing that. But however, the neighbors kind of liked the golf course and really didn't want the development. And there's no level of politics in which elected leaders are closer to the population and more affected by 30, 40, 50 emails or 30 people showing up at a council meeting than a local city council. And that is the basic unit of land policy of the decisions that go to land use policy are not made at the state or federal level. They're not even made at the regional level. They're made by cities, by planning commissions, and by city councils. So it's very close. So in a community, and this one was one of them, doesn't really want to see this, they use one of the tools at their disposal is to go through the environmental process, the EIR process, to file a lot of comments, complaints, questions, challenges, and delays things out. And so thus far, the owner of this property has been rather stifled. Now, in the last year with the numbers up, they may decide the better part of wisdom is to run it as a golf course again, because it's perhaps considerably more popular, more successful than it has been in a long, long time. But that's the nature and the reason why this bill is sort of focused that direction. And that creates a powerful incentive on behalf of building trades and industries. Those are jobs, that's revenue and so forth. Of course, that's temporary. The golf course provides multiplier economic benefits and jobs and all those kinds of things in perpetuity. A construction project only does it until the construction is finished, and keep that in mind. Now, when the construction is SoFi Stadium, which was, well, I don't know, a $5 or $6 billion project, and then after it opens, there's quite a few multiplier effects. But a residential community doesn't have that impact. And beyond that, It actually takes up resources once it opens, because it eliminates there are park space requirements. There are, impacts to the school district, impacts to the roads, and so forth. And those things are not necessarily picked up in the tax base, because in the Proposition 13 era, which we've been in for over 40 years, municipalities' primary source of revenue is the sales tax. So if you're putting in an auto mall, that's one thing, but putting in housing, ultimately that's a diminishing return over time. So it becomes more burdensome than anything. So there are a lot of factors. The point here, what I'm going through right now, are probably the arguments that the golf industry is developing right now to try to gain some allies. And I think the chief one's going to be this notion that again, Sacramento is trying to take land use decisions out of from local control to state control, and in this case, they're doing it to increase the housing stock, and that has been a big source of tension between local government and Sacramento at all levels. It doesn't matter what the political stripes are, from Republican to Democrat, conservative to liberal. That's been a point of tension, and I think there'll be some resonance there. In addition, but what this audience needs to understand as golfers is that no one is suggesting these kinds of special exemptions to turn baseball diamonds into housing tracts. No one is looking at, you could put 10,000 golf courses in the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. Golf is an inviting target in the sense that it's 150 acres in one parcel that is not always politically popular. It's seen as a soft target. But understand that all those other interests are well-heeled, well-defended, well-organized, have a Sacramento presence, and they have a local presence. Golf, because as you saw from Ted's slides, just had it so good for so long, we've never had to come to terms with these kinds of attacks. And make no mistake about it, this particular bill, this is my opinion now, I've not seen a bill that's as consequential to the future of the golf industry come across, be filed in Sacramento with any seriousness in 20 years, maybe my lifetime. So when you hear from the PGA section or the SCGA or the California Alliance for Golf, when these things go out massively to the members of your golf facility and you see them, it's really incumbent upon us this year to defeat this, because this one has been narrowed down a little bit, probably to aim mostly at daily fee and resort golf courses, but it has impacts upon private, and ultimately it is the slippery slope. It is the prelude to going after what turned out to be maybe a little bit politically intractable this year, a little too much opposition, which is going right after the municipal sector. For those of you who know the history of golf, for example, in Los Angeles, this is, as you saw, there are more golfers in the state of California than anywhere else. There are more golf courses, which explains some of the problems that we have, but there are more golfers. Not surprising, there are more persons in this state, and the weather is great. And Los Angeles is the largest city in California by many, many multiples. Once upon a time, that city had scores of daily fee facilities and standalone driving ranges, and when there was much less population, there was a lot more golf that was available to the population. It was a less expensive activity, but what really the dynamic was that the land was there was a decent use of the land financially. Right now, in this second largest city in the United States and largest golf market, there is one and only one daily fee golf course, and that's Angeles National. It's in the Tujunga Wash. When you're there, you think you're out in the countryside. It's in the corner of a city, and it's in a floodplain. So you can't put housing, you can't put commercial development. So keeping in mind that the history there, as substantial and some very fine daily fee golf courses, ended up being much higher and better financial uses. When I say higher and better uses, I mean financially. And so what we have right now are municipal golf courses protected, again, by Surplus Land Act, and more importantly, by the Public Park Preservation Act. In addition, we have private clubs, and many of them are very elite. Those are protected by the fact that you can't make someone sell their property, and Los Angeles has some of the richest people in the United States, and all the money in the world can't buy your own what you want in your backyard. So they're going to keep that. The Public Park Preservation Act keeps the municipal sector, although we're not adding to that. And to the extent at which some of even the off-course amenities that Ted talked about, in this market anyway, where it's highly populated, that sometimes comes at the expense of golf holes at a moment when that really cannot afford that. That's a subject for another day. So what we're looking at is if this bill passes, that phenomenon, that market capitalism phenomenon that turned Los Angeles into only two kinds of golf courses, just the municipally owned, and you're not going to add to those ever again. And those are packed from dawn to dusk right now, and elite private clubs. Doesn't leave a whole lot in between. And that's going to extend to suburbs, exurbs, to more mid-sized cities in California, because it's going to create it's going to take away all those tools that communities that rightfully come forward, those who don't even play golf, and defend the golf courses in their community, because they're tremendous amenities in cities. They add great value to housing values. They add great value to employers seeking to land in certain places, because the availability of affordable golf and accessible golf is an amenity that may entice someone to actually put up with some of the high prices of housing here when they come from one of the other 49 states in moving out. So communities tend to defend them. This would take all those tools away. In addition, there's that tension between mandates that come from the state to meet certain housing needs and elements, and small cities that rebel against that. And now they're almost being tunneled into just simply look at your golf courses. That's where we're trying to steer you. So I'm going to, I'm not being an alarmist on this one. The ball is in golf's court in California. If we don't step forward to defeat this bill, we are on a slippery slope towards more bills like this that will simply put golf in the crosshairs and put it into a housing problem. So with that, and on that quasi-alarmist notice, yes, we're coming out of COVID and things look good. And I used a weather-based expression, March coming in as a lion and leaving like a lamb, to explain maybe COVID. But I also add on that weather-based, that's the other issue. I hope we've been so focused on COVID and some other things, hadn't noticed that it hasn't rained and it hasn't snowed for a second year substantially in a row. So you better hope next year is good, or we're looking at that full panoply of problems we faced during the mega drought. And so life moves on. We move out of COVID. I think the golf industry performed in an exemplary fashion. We need to keep performing in an exemplary fashion, whether it's AB 672 or some of these other longer range challenges with drought. And with that, I will stop the filibuster and yield the floor. And again, thank the section for inviting me today. And thanks, Len. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, section.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. And thank you for the insights again, particularly at the level we get them on such an important issue. And so everyone knows that, the California Alliance for Golf, which is made up of all the components and the associations that are present on this call, and others as well, our allied partners, are taking a stand and preparing a note to our legislatures about 672. So by no means are we giving up on that nor ignoring it. We're on it. So time to wrap up, and I'd like to turn it over to our good friend Tom Addis. Tom, some closing remarks, please.
Yeah, Len, thanks, and thanks so much, Craig, for your valuable insights, and Craig Winter and Jimmy Becker and Mike Sweeney and Ted Elephario, as usual, excellent presentations, and we really appreciate the USGA recognizing those challenges out there, particularly when it comes to AMSTAT and the merchandising rule, the payment rule, how that goes, and considering the PGA of America's words as well as our activities and our livelihood. So I think that was very important and should be. And of course, Ted's information regarding golf around the country, especially the numbers of golfers here in California now. But again, thank you, and thanks to you, Len, and thanks to Nikki and Bryce and everybody else for participation. One thing I'd like to remind you, the next chat, which is on April 9th, I believe. Right now, we're still on a 2-week schedule. We may be looking at going to once per month, especially as busy as everyone is. But from this point forward, we'll be in a new format with Zoom. I don't know if any of you have used Zoom in the past, but Bryce wanted me to remind you all that the next chat we will be using the format with Zoom. So look forward to that. And that makes it a lot easier for everybody to chime in with questions if you like, and have a good time in that regard. So Len and everybody, thank you. Back to you, Len.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And here we are at the end of March. And as you say, our thanks to yourself, Nikki, Jeff, Bryce, Tyler, and Caitlin for getting us on the air. And Craig and Mike, thank you for all of that. And as Tom mentioned, listening to all the input from the PGA of America, from HQ all the way to the local sections and certainly the local members. We look forward to the Olympic Club, June 3 to 6 for the Women's Open. And then as Mike mentioned, 2 weeks after that, June 17 to 20 at Torrey Pines. And then backing up a little bit more, we're about a month and a half away from the PGA Championship at Kiawah at the Ocean Course on May 20. And very, very importantly, a week from tomorrow will be the first round of the 2021 Masters. So the calendar is full and has been said. Let's keep our distance where necessary, and when necessary, keep our masks on and pay attention to each other. We'll continue to be as successful as we've been. We're on what we need to be. Our contact information is on the screen. And please let us know your thoughts and comments. And we'll see you on the 9th, a week from Friday. And be safe, everyone. Thank you for your continued support and guidance, and best to all.
Thank you.